Da 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 da. Welcome to Disenfranchised, the one where we explain disenfranchised grief through the lens of friends. I'm Karen Bulinski Mathison from The Naked Grief, and I am here re-recording episode 13 since last week we had episode 14 released due to a technical issue. So this week we're looking at the episode known as the one with the boobies, and we are calling it The Day Boundaries Blurred. So, the intro to this episode is Chandler accidentally sees Rachel naked, and what follows is a cascade of boundary violations, um, and retaliatory actions and hurt feelings. But here's what makes the episode a perfect mirror for real life. Nobody explicitly sets boundaries in the first place. So Rachel assumed that her closed apartment door was enough protection. Chandler assumed he could walk in and grab whatever he wanted whenever he wanted, and he wouldn't be crossing any lines. Well, that really wasn't the case. So this is what happens in our real relationships when we expect people to read our minds instead of telling them exactly what we need. The core issue is unexpected expectations. Rachel's expectations was simple. If my door is closed, I should be able to walk out of the shower in just a towel and not feel violated. And that's reasonable. She never said it out loud, and she just assumed it was obvious. In real life, this is where hurt can begin. We put ourselves out there for people. We show up, we give, we care deeply, and we silently expect them to show up the same way in return. We assume they know what we need, and we assume they'll respect our boundaries without us having to spell them out. And when they don't, we feel betrayed. But we also all know why we don't like the word assume. So, the truth is, we have to learn how to express what our expectations are and set our boundaries that are reasonable. People can't respect boundaries if they don't know they exist. So in this episode, Rachel doesn't say to Chandler, hey, when I'm in the shower or getting dressed, please knock and wait for permission to enter. Well, he would never know if she was in the shower or getting dressed in the middle of the apartment, but he should have respected the fact that if the apartment door is closed, even if it's unlocked, knock. In real life, weak boundaries look like giving without clearly stating what you need or expect in return, hosting, supporting, and showing up for people without discussing expectations, assuming people know how to treat you based on how you treat them, because that loving thy neighbor as thyself doesn't always work the same way. Not speaking up when someone crosses a line because you don't want them to seem difficult. So that's a real one, right? It's real easy for us to not express what we need or set those boundaries, but it's real easy for us to get our feelings hurt because our expectations are different. And that fear of confrontation, that fear of seeming difficult, that's something that we need to learn how to let go of and move forward with. If you continue to pour from an empty cup, hoping that something will change, that may not work either. When you don't set these boundaries, you're essentially leaving the door open for disappointment. Now, I've only been talking about boundaries. There's a lot more that goes on in this episode. So, for starters, the side caveat of the episode is Phoebe has a new guy, Roger. And Roger is a psychiatrist or psychologist or some kind of shrink, I think is how they phrase it. And he starts to notice different character traits in all of the friends group. He calls out Chandler and says, I'd hate to be there when the laughter stops. And Chandler goes, well, what do you mean? And he actually starts to say things like, well, you're an only child, right? Your parents left you when you were preteens. And we start to learn a little bit more about Chandler's background. He expresses some things between Monica and Ross and how some of Ross's behaviors could be because he's trying to do something to enhance. I can't remember the exact wording. Because Monica says, well, you married a lesbian in order to make me look good. Like some of these things Ross may have known predeterminedly just to get her in the better graces of their parents. And Roger eventually starts to pick on the friends group and says to Phoebe, oh, they're all about define me with their big cups of coffee. And she does something really hard. She chooses her friends over a relationship. He may have made her feel good, but the way he comes at her friends, she gets very protective. Again, she sets boundaries and she says, yeah, no, if you're not going to accept them the way they are, I don't want you. And that's powerful. Phoebe's actually really smart, and we see a lot of her insight in every episode, which is really cool. And then the big underlier through the episode, other than everybody trying to see each other naked, because there's this ripple effect of revenge, because the friends say, well, Chandler, if you saw her, it's only fair that she sees you. And Rachel tries to see Chandler and sees Joey. Joey tries to get revenge on Rachel and sees Monica. And then Monica tries to get revenge on Joey and sees Joey's dad. And that's where I'm going with this. So Joey's dad comes into the episode and he's staying at Joey's apartment. And his dad's on the phone. And Joey grabs the phone and starts talking and thinking that it's his mom. And then says, whoa, this isn't mom. And learns that his dad has been having an affair for quite some time. And Joey goes through a lot of grief with this. It's the grief of his parents' marriage not being as picture perfect as he thought it was. It's him feeling remorse and grief for his mom, not because he thinks that she doesn't know and he's hurt for her. And then he has that hard conversation with his dad and says, you got to come clean to mom. And then he meets the mistress and she shows up at the apartment because he forgot his toupee at her place. So she brings it by and it's late. So Joey's dad says, well, just stay. And Joey becomes the parent and says, she can stay, but you're not sleeping together. Not in my house. My house, my rules. You guys take separate bedrooms, Chandler, and I'll take the couch. And again, boundaries. So, and then he tells his dad, you got to come clean to mom. Well, his dad comes clean to mom, but Joey doesn't get the reaction that he thought. His mom shows up and slaps him upside the head and says, what were you thinking? I knew. I'm not saying that it's perfect, but the way he shows up for me now, I like. He still treats me like we're newlyweds. He brings me flowers. He romances me. He feels guilty. And the way he shows up for me now is what he did when we first started. So I just want things back the way they were. Well, here's the thing. When you open a Pandora's box, you can't put everything back the way it was. So even though they try to make everything go back to normal, it never will, because everything's been exposed. It's out in the open now. And now their marriage has to be redefined. For Joey's dad to continue this, they have to set new boundaries and expectations. She's aware. So does he keep having the mistress and now they have an open relationship? Do they go into marriage counseling? They never really tell us what happens, but this is a whole coaching thing of, all right, a bunch of crap got unloaded on you. So now what do you do? What do you want this to look like? And how do you set new boundaries for yourself? That's tough. So this also goes back to the friends going back and forth on each other, because it's the ripple effect of unmet expectations. Joey's mom never thought that it would come to fruition that she would have to deal with her husband's cheating. She never thought that the family would ever have to find out and set her own boundaries. The friends group never thought they'd have to worry about walking in on each other. So once Chandler sees Rachel, the boundary violation triggers a chain reaction. Everyone starts trying to even the score. Monica tells Phoebe that they need to reciprocate like all of this and chain reaction stuff. And Joey tries to see Rachel. Rachel tries to see Joey. It becomes a game of retaliation instead of conversation about respect. This is what happens in partnerships, friendships, and close relationships when expectations aren't clear. One person feels hurt, they withdraw or retaliate. The other person feels confused or attacked. Communication breaks down and trust erodes. And again, with boundaries, when any of these things happen, whether you choose to retaliate or withdraw, or you feel confused, if you don't express yourself to the person that you're feeling a reaction from, the domino effect happens. Because in this case, Chandler saw Rachel. Rachel needed to react and respond to what Chandler did. And instead, all of the friends got involved because everybody kept seeing everybody. Whereas if Rachel and Chandler had just had a conversation about boundaries and forgiveness, it probably would have squashed everything from the giddy up. The real damage isn't the initial boundary violation, it's the silence that follows. The partnership lesson is to think about a partnership or close friendship that's hurt you. Chances are you were giving more than you were receiving: time, energy, support, and resources, or expecting things to be reciprocated without asking for it, assuming they'd show up the same way you do, or not speaking up early. When small boundaries are crossed and you don't speak up, those lines get blurred and it's easy to keep getting your feelings hurt. And then things just implode. And if you continue to invest in a relationship that feels one sided, you're not doing anybody any favors. You're teaching that other person that that's acceptable behavior, and you're allowing yourself to be taken advantage of in ways that you may not intend. So this is the exact pattern that leads to betrayal. And it's not because that the other person is intentionally cruel, but because you never told them what you needed. So again, strong boundaries are so important, and what those look like. And it's not trying to be mean, it's being clear. Rachel could have just said, when I'm in my apartment, please knock on the door. Don't just walk in. In real partnerships and friendships, strong boundaries can sound like, I'm happy to support I'm happy to support you as long as I feel like I'm valued. I'm hosting an event, so I'd appreciate it if you show up. If you cancel plans last minute, it affects me. I need more notice going forward. I show up for you because I care, but I also need to know that you're showing up for me. These aren't demands, they're clarity. And the hard truth about expectations is you can't always put yourself out there for people and expect them to show up the way you want them to. Not because people are inherently selfish, but because they don't know what you need unless you tell them. They have different values and communication styles than you do. They're dealing with their own stuff. A lot of times that's part of the other problem. We feel violated. We feel like our paths were crossed, lines were blurred, and we don't express what we need. We don't share that capacity and that space. And those unexpected moments can destroy relationships because of the fact that we were never clear to begin with. So we have to be willing to own that. The people who hurt you most are often the ones that you gave the most to without setting clear boundaries. Because the bigger the gap between what you gave and what you expected in return, the bigger the hurt when reality doesn't match your hope. So the healing work. If you're in a place where you feel betrayed by someone you've supported deeply, ask yourself, did I ever explicitly state my expectations, or did I assume they knew? Did I set boundaries early, or did I let small violations slide, hoping they'd stop? Am I giving to get, or am I giving because I genuinely want to, with no strings attached? And what do I actually need from this person? And have I told them? The person worth keeping in your life are the ones that, when you tell them what you need, actually listen and adjust. The ones who don't, they're a lesson. They're teaching you that maybe that they're not the right fit, and or maybe they were just to be a lesson. And that's how you learn to protect yourself going forward. So it's the holidays. Um, for anybody that's watching this any time in the near future, like I'm recording this in December. So, Christmas is around the corner, New Year's is around the corner. There's a lot going on. People are extremely busy. It's real easy to open a door to people and have it slammed in your face. And it's not something that you should take personally. When you're in grief or have had trauma and disappointment in the past, it's real easy to have um, things escalate for you that may not necessarily be valid. So if something happens, let's say you're hosting a party or invite somebody over and they change their plans or tell you they can't make it. Yeah, your feelings may be hurt, but also be understanding that right now they've got a lot going on. Maybe they needed to take a beat and take a pause and just take a day off. Or maybe there was some place that they needed to be that was equally as important as you, but they thought that they could find balance and still see you in a different, respectable time. So being understanding and forgiving is good, but also setting those boundaries so that people don't think that you're just a revolving door that'll open again for them when they're ready is important as well. So closing thoughts. This episode isn't really about nakedness or accidental violations. It's about what happens when we assume people know our boundaries instead of telling them. It's about the resentment that builds when we give without clarity. It's about the hurt that follows when expectations are silent. Your boundaries are your responsibility, not because you're being difficult or demanding, but because nobody can respect what they don't know. The people in your life aren't mind readers, even if you think they are. It's it's you who are in need of being responsible. You're not responsible to make them guess. You're only responsible for being clear of what you need and then paying attention to who actually respects that. And that's where the healing really begins. So next week, we're going into episode 15. The Day Opportunity Whispered is what we're calling it. It's actually the one with the stone guy, which is when Monica gets an opportunity to actually follow some of her dreams and things go a little sideways. So, Melissa should be back next week, and you may not see my face. You may just hear our voices. I wanted to give you something since it's just a one-sided thing. And we'll delve a little deeper then. Until then, have a great week. Da 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 da.